Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as always, we're going to date stamp this. It's year 3, blog 11. So we're 11 blogs in for this year. It's in legacy numbers, blog number 115. Well, I'm meeting 200, who knows? And today's date is the 5th of the 5th, 2024. And this weekend is a bank holiday weekend for the UK. So I've got Monday off, and that's quite a good thing, really, because I think I need a little bit of time to get my head around things at the moment. Anybody who's watched these blogs has known that things haven't been going particularly well recently. I've tried to remain positive. I think I've done an okayish job at doing that. It's been pretty telling, though. Whenever you're in a dark place, other things suddenly turn up the gain. What do I mean by that? You know, it's like things that are minor or small can seem huge, you know, like turning up the volume beyond 10. You know, I suppose when I look back, I've looked at things where I want to help people, and that's probably because of my upbringing. But I also do it, you know, for, which is a good thing, but I also do it for, you know, some selfish reasons. You know, it's like maybe people will do something nice to me when I'm in a bad place. But not everybody can do things like that. You know, you have to think about people's lives, you know, what they're going through. You can't have an expectation or think that, well, you owe me, you know what I mean, type situation. But I never think of those things. Whenever somebody is in a rut or in a problem, I genuinely go, oh, how can I help? And then I get frustrated because I'm too far away, or I can't just go round there and make a cup of tea and have a chat. The only thing you've got really is, oh, I hope things get better, or words, or a phone call, or buying a gift, you know, that sort of thing. And, you know, I've got a couple of people, a couple of friends that are very close to me, or, you know, I feel are close to me, and haven't heard from them in a long time. But I also know that they're going through their own problems at the moment. And, you know, there's bits of me that go, I really could do, though, with that conversation, or that catch up that goes beyond the blog, you know, that can I hear your voice again? And when it doesn't happen, you get remorseful, you get sad. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, I've tried to move past that, and I've had some couple of brilliant things happen to me this week, and a couple of things that get me worried that I'd want to chat to someone. Do you know? So let's just talk a little bit then, shall we, about my week? It's probably wise. So usually I start off my week with a Monday, because, you know, I do this blog on a Sunday. So on Monday, you know, I went to work, no real problems there. I knew that in the evening, an old friend of mine, Playtendoguy, was going to do a live stream that evening. Now, we'd we'd had a chat sort of late last week, and a couple of words over the weekend, and he asked if I wanted to come on and have a chat. It'd be nice to get caught up, and of course I agreed totally. But something must have happened, because on Monday there was no, the advert went up to say, you know, that it'll be on at 7 o'clock, and then it was 8 o'clock, and then nothing. And I didn't get a text message from my friend, but I just thought to myself, oh, maybe something's going on that I best let, you know, Pete get on with things. You know, you don't want people interfering if there's a personal thing going on with family. So I thought nothing of it, other than I waited around. But before that particular stream was going to go ahead, my mate Steve got in touch with me. Now, Steve, you'll know, is one of my really nice friends who I have so much attention for. You know, I look forward to his streams, our chats, getting caught up, that sort of thing. And he'd been playing a game called Planet Crafter, which I did sort of like do a little clip of in one of my blogs. Can't remember if it was last week or the week before. And we sort of tried to do a joint stream, you know, just like, I wonder what it'd be like playing multiplayer on this game. So it didn't work out very well on Sunday night, but we tried again Monday and we managed to get it to work. Of course, what I didn't know was my camera was on. I thought it was just doing voice recording. Anyway, we got it going. I could hear him. He could hear me. You know, we started to build a base together. He needed to get, you know, some food in his mouth, you know, because I mean it's tea time. Because this was around about 6 o'clock on a Monday evening, and thought nothing of it really, other than he came back and said that it had caught, you know, some stuff that might be copyright infringement on my telly. So I was a bit sad that I had the camera on. I didn't know, and so he said that we'll have to do that again at some point. You know, like in the future. You know, right now. Very busy guy, needing to do stuff with his family. God bless him. Brilliant. So that ended Monday. Tuesday, Playtendoguy did actually do a stream. He actually came on Tuesday evening. I wasn't involved in that one, but he did get a good friend of mine, Ryan, on, and I did watch an awful lot of it, and it was a fantastic stream. It's nice to get caught up with people, you know. Pete was there, Ryan was there. I asked a few questions, wished them well, hope the stream went well, and they were there for a good couple of hours. It's really good to know that people that you used to watch on a regular basis that don't do that anymore are still okay. You worry about them. You know, they become your friends. Do you know what I mean? Like more than just somebody that's on a screen. And Pete is definitely one of those types of people in my life. And so sort of Tuesday went, and I was really looking forward to Wednesday, because on Wednesday I do a little bit of a stream with Ian Hill, the Ramblings. But it must have been something that just like caught up with me, because I finished work on Wednesday and fell asleep when I sat down. And I should have guessed it really, because at Wednesday lunchtime, something happened. I'd driven to my place of work. My lunch came along. I felt a pain in my chest, so I did what I was told to do, which was sit down or stop and use my spray. And it took me, you know, a bit longer than an hour to get back to work. And driving back wasn't difficult, but I did have to pick up the rest of my prescription that evening, because they didn't give me my whole prescription when I collected it earlier that week, and I fell asleep. And it was 8:15 when I woke up, and then of course there's the mad rush to get set up, wondering if my friend was wondering where I was, because of course he's got to start at 8 o'clock regardless of whether I'm there or not. And it was sort of like a big mad rush. But the nice thing about doing something with Ian is that he makes you feel relaxed. It's like, oh, it's not a problem. As soon as I was there was a few in jokes from the people that were chatting. Uh, maybe I was my 3-wheel van had a tire blow or something and only had 2 wheels, or that sort of thing. Some Only Fools and Horses jokes were in there. And we had a great time. Do you know what? It went on for 4 hours this time. My God. It didn't worry me because I knew I had Friday off. So Wednesday, going to bed, getting up for work and doing my job wasn't too much of a difficulty. Thursday work came and went, no problems. And I looked therefore forward to my day off. So on Thursday night, I did a little stream. I was bored, nothing going on, so I did an hour-long stream of Planet Crafter. A lot of people came on and said, "You must give us some forewarning next time." And I have to admit, yeah, I should. But it's one of those things where when I'm bored, I'm not going to put an advert out and say in half an hour I'm going to play a game, because in half an hour I'll probably be bored again, not want to do it. So I just impromptu did it. And it was great because there was a couple of people that came on. Steve was there. But 8-Bit Rage came on. Now 8-Bit Rage is a channel I've been subscribed to for over a year. And a lot of people probably don't know, on my side, don't know about her. But she does Amstrad games. And literally, I discovered her at the time where she won this little local award for Streamer of the Month, and I don't know too much about the Amstrad, so of course I tend to sub to people that I've got very little knowledge on, so there'll be somebody that concentrates on Amstrad, somebody who concentrates on Spectrum, somebody who concentrates on Atari, then you've got a bigger world, to look at. And she was there. She mentioned about a little problem she had on Steam, and I gave her some advice. Steve came on, and they both had a little chat together, I think. And it was just a great night all over. And Friday came along, and I don't know if it's because maybe I'm a little bit worried about this scan that I've got, because I've now got a date for this scan. It's obviously a hospital that's quite far away, and I'm worried about how I'm going to get there. But it's Friday, May 10th, and maybe the thought of it not being that far away, them finding something bad, maybe I've got to have open heart surgery, who knows, is causing me distress. But all I knew was, as soon as I found out what the date was, I turned to people that I wanted to speak to, and I sent a couple of text messages, and all of them were busy, and that was a shame. So Friday I went for a walk to clear my mind, and that pain came back, and this time I was walking past the hospital, so I walked in, and I spent a couple of hours there. And they basically just monitored my heart, my blood pressure. They noticed that my blood pressure was high, so they gave me an injection and allowed me to go when my injection sort of went off. And I got home and I fell asleep. Don't know whether these things are related, the oxygenation in your blood or whatever. But Friday evening I would normally sort of like watch Scott's stream or play a game or something. I caught the end of Scott's stream, to be quite honest. And I suppose I turned up too late because I said hello and I wished them well, and it didn't get read out. All of that sort of stuff. And, you then get to Saturday where you're prepping for your blog, and then you're here. So there's a couple of things in there that you can see that are quite distressful. But there's also some good things in there, because last Sunday I mentioned that I was going to the garden centre to get some flowers for my mother. And we finally got that done. So that was brilliant. So I've got a load of flowers. We bought £60 worth. Yeah, £60. Begonias, all sorts of stuff. And I've started to do those pots. I've done 3 hanging baskets and 4 pots so far, but I need to get 2 bags of peat. Because when you do the new pots, you'd scrape out all of the old remnants of last year, and you usually with those remnants dig that into the earth, to give it some, because there's still some nutrients and stuff in those. I only had about a bag of peat left, and I've used it all doing those hanging baskets and those 4 pots. So I need today to go and pick up 2 bags of potting plant peat, and I'll be doing that because I know that there's a special on at one of the garden centres. I think it's £5 for 1 bag. If you buy 2, it's £8. So yeah, you save £2 if you buy 2 bags, and I need probably about 2 bags. So I'll be getting that. So that's pretty much my week. It's like I say, it's been ups and downs, and the weather's been mixed Monday to Friday, but Saturday and Sunday sun, and it's warm. So I'm really taking all of that in at the moment. I'm feeling, I've got a t-shirt on, I'm feeling quite warm. Talking's making me thirsty. But we do the news, don't we? So let's get the news out the way. So we start off with the war. We always do. The article I read was, this was this morning, Russian attacks on Ukraine's Kharkiv and Dnipro regions and the Black Sea port of Odessa killed at least 2 civilians and injured others. And also damaged infrastructure and homes. The Russian shelling confirmed killing of a 49-year-old man on the street near he lived, and an 82-year-old woman. I looked at the other news, and that one sort of like came to mind because it's that horror of war thing again, where shelling is going on. They're destroying infrastructure. There's obviously civilians around. And they are just fodder. I just think to myself when I look at that article, like, that probably goes on every day. And it's a nothing article over there now. But to me, that's a big thing. Any death is a big thing. But if you can imagine, if you total up all of these civilian lives, it must be atrocious. And how can you live like that? I mean, I in my lifetime, I haven't had to live with bullets flying overhead. You know what I mean? I've lived through the threat of nuclear war during the 80s, but in my head, I was always thinking, nah, they'll never press the button. But it was always there, so of course there is a bit of angst. But that's all I can say about that, really. So my thoughts are always with the Ukrainian people. And then we move to just some of the local news. So what's been happening in the UK this week? Well, it's been a local election week. This is where the PM, the civil servants, our politicians, who won their regions, they're up for renewal, and obviously therefore there are other politicians that equally want to take over that position, just like a general election. So yeah, it was a massive Conservative loss. I think they lost 115 seats, something like that. They definitely lost like nearly half of their seats. There were huge gains for Labour, but not so many as you'd think. And the biggest amount of people that were moving from the Conservative moved to the Liberal Democrats and the Green parties, the independents. So this is very similar and eerie to about 10, 12 years ago. We had a hung parliament. There was no government that won an outstanding majority that you had to have the politicians sit round and say, we need to merge to make one government. And I think the last time that happened, it was the Conservatives and the Lib Dems, Liberal Democrats. But you know what's going to happen. The biggest party, the Conservatives, would then eke out the Liberal Democrats, and it then becomes just a Conservative government. So is that going to happen at the general election next year? Who knows? But that's all politics. I don't... my dad would have been having something to say here. If he was sitting here, he'd be going on and on and on about it, but I don't. So another success for Labour was they won their vote for the next 4 years for tenureship for the London Mayor position. So London Mayor position is quite an important position. I mean, London is one of the biggest land masses to control. Labour control London. So basically they won another 4 years. Some people have looked at that and gone, oh dear. Because he had, the person who's the mayor at the moment has introduced increases in congestion charges and all sorts of stuff that, to be quite honest, aren't helping the people at all, especially during these lean years of no money. So that happened. And then the biggest sorrow story of probably this week was the sad killing of a young lad called Daniel Ajorn. Now, this was a 12-year-old lad, I think. I think he was 12. He was just walking to school, and he was attacked by an assailant with a sword, stabbed. So it was considered a stabbing. And of course, all the papers showed the pictures of the young lad. And it was just very sad to see yet another knife crime story in the papers. I must admit, whenever I think about death, I always think about the worst ways to go, like, drowning or suffocating or, that sort of thing, or a slow bleeding death or whatever. Knives are there, but I don't think about them happening to me. I feel safe in my environment, that I'm not going to be stabbed, especially not shot. I mean, gun crime, very low compared to the States. But any way to go before your time is a terrible way. And these pictures were heartfelt, I mean, it was all over the news. And my thoughts are with the family. And that's the news, guys. Doom and gloom, no fun. There isn't anything in there about, I don't know, like a car being found on the moon or something, or ice cream sales, have been frozen. Something like that, something to make us smile. There's nothing there. I'm not surprised people aren't listening to the radio and the TV this much, because who wants to see more doom and gloom? It's just awful. So what do we do now? I usually do my next best thing, which is the shout outs. I love doing the shout outs. The shout outs are people out there that don't have daily contact with me that have watched this blog, wish me well, sometimes ask me questions, and probably fill the biggest section of this blog, to be quite honest. And for that, I have to be totally thankful for it all. This blog is very important to me, really, now. It is something that I could do and switch off, still do and just make private. But I love actually thinking about the bigger picture, giving a little bit more exposure to what I am, and therefore giving stuff to you guys, And I've heard so many little comments in the past that have said that I've become sort of like something to watch on a Sunday. And if it wasn't there, they're not quite sure what they would do, and all of that sort of stuff, which only makes you feel very warm. It does make you question, therefore, why there aren't more likes or more subs and so forth. And I must admit, I lost more subs this week than I've done in the last 2 months. Really, really weird. And yet, more people watched my videos. And that's a health. So in one part it was healthy, and another part it was incredibly sad. I'm hoping for balance, really. But I want to move away from talking about subs and all of that sort of stuff because to be quite honest, they just sound like whinging. But I mean, you have to understand that if you did something, like an essay for school, you'd wait for the mark to come back. That was your thing, to show that it was listened to, read, and you got something back. So, of course, the subs and the analytics that go with a video is sort of my look back at how I'm doing. You know what I mean? I don't want to do something bad, and if I can correct it, I will. So I tend to look at that quite closely. So let's get some of these lovely, lovely people's names read out and then move on to the questions, because I love all that. So people that have commented this week, and I hope I haven't left anybody out, they are in no particular order: Denny, Robert's Retro Gaming, Jambon, Carl Todd, Wee Bob Art, Ian Hill The Ramblings, Steve's Gaming, Physical Media Life, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Martroid, and James Chavez, who commented last week. So it's nice that a person is recurring back, isn't it? That's really, really good. And so we'll now move into the questions. And they're not going to be in any order again. So I'm just bringing them up and making sure I can read all the notes. And the first one is... first one is probably going to be the longest one. And anybody who's watched the blogs will know what that means. Yes, it's my mate Denny. Yes, he's right at the top page here. So let's get crack-a-lacking with him. He's put, "Hiya, mate. Hope things have settled down a little for you and your mother's health. Your mother health-wise this week. Still no better myself. This virus is rather nasty and prolonging." Yeah, I'm listening to that, and I'm sort of mimicking it with my other friend, Mamemeister, who's, we'll talk about a little bit later on when we talk about his channel, but he's been suffering from a cough. He had a virus, and it affected his throat, and he's had it for about 4 or 5 weeks. So it seems like there's a little bug sort of like thing going around, and it seems to be particularly nasty. Okay, so you continue. "Really enjoyed our discussion with Ian on our dystopian future video. You must join us again, Ian. Love your analysis on the films." Yes, totally 100% agree. It was nice having a third person come on. It was nice Denny and I were there at the beginning. Don't get me wrong. We got the majority out the way. But when you can then bring someone in to give another third party sort of like analysis on things, I think that worked really well. It did okay as well. A lot of people gave some really good feedback to that. I don't think it's been done that many times before on YouTube. You know that I've looked at YouTube just recently, and there's a lot of videos on Planet of the Apes, right? And if you think about it, well, of course there will be, because the new film comes out next month. So of course everybody, every Charlie in the world, every Charlotte in the world is doing a video on the series of Planet of the Apes, the classics, the remakes, all in preparation for the next video, which will be the film when it comes out next month. But of course, we did Soylent Green, and we did Omega Man, and we called it the Dystopian Trilogy, which is what it's semi-known as. And therefore, we got a sort of like the best of both worlds, talking about Planet of the Apes, but also talking about two other films without it becoming samey with the other Planet of the Apes documentaries that are going on at the moment. Now, there's only one that stands out for me of those Planet of the Apes documentaries when I was looking to see how many there were, and that's my mate Sammy G, who did a wonderful retrospective, and he's now moving forward into the new era. He's just done the Tim Burton remake in 2001, and it's an interesting analogy. Definitely go and look out for Sammy G. He's quite easy to find, lovely, likable guy. Got lots and lots of time for him, and his thoughts are all there, and they're his own thoughts, not swayed, by what Critic said at the time and all of that sort of stuff. So that's good. So you continue, Denny. I loved your Stan and Ollie film capsule. A very special film. Well acted, with a decent pace to the script. Your Naked Gun video also put another on my list to catch up with. I love slapstick, but originally it didn't stick with me over the years for this film. Yeah, and I can totally understand that. And thank you very much, guys, those people that have been watching those capsule reviews. I felt the need to put something out there, and I thought, could I do something else? And this particular one, The Naked Gun, talks about a topic that I think needs to be brought up now by far too many other channels, and that is, what's happened to all the comedies? Where are all the comedies gone? What? There was a glut in the 80s and 90s. You couldn't move for a comedy being there. Now, next to nothing. Such a sad thing. So I chose Naked Gun because it's a film that's really played deadpan. It's told very seriously, but actually it's a slapstick film. It's a spoof film. It's just many different genres, slapstick, all sorts. So I wanted to get that out there, and again, within 2 days, it's doing really, really well. And I also put in there how I sort of like, when I open up my films, how I store them, because I put plastic at a very well, it's not expensive, but they end up being around about 30 or 40 pence each. A plastic case to protect the metal. And it made me think about my comic collection, to be quite honest. I've got a very large comic collection, over 10,000 comics. And you have to change what they call the comic bag. That's because people have found out that collectors over the years, that have got comics that are 50 years old, 60 years old, you can't just have them raw out in the air. They react with the air. So you put them in bags. Trouble is, plastic over years degrades. It's a substance that basically reacts with the air. So I don't know if you've noticed it, but if you have something that's shrink wrapped, eventually it wrinkles, and then eventually it yellows. And it's just one of those things. And if you're not too careful, and you really keep the plastic tight against what you're trying to protect, it can lift the artwork, because the plastic will soften and it'll lift the artwork, a little bit like Play-Doh when you used to stamp your Play-Doh onto a print onto the newspaper. It used to lift the print off the paper. Same thing. So not only do people like Rock God and I totally turn around and say you need to clean your discs, you definitely need to make sure that you open them up and make sure they're okay and all of that sort of stuff. I've added a little thing in regards to the plastic covering that covers them, because there's nothing wrong with keeping that shrink wrap around a case, but you don't want to have it on there for longer than about a year, I would have said. It's only supposed to be so that you can't take the disc out while in the shop. That's the reason it's shrink wrapped. And obviously to protect the contents. But it's not supposed to be a long thing. It's not supposed to be on there forever. So, of course, you can imagine it's something that will react over time with air. And you're just going to have a big problem later on, because you're just going to damage your artwork. So anyway, we continue. You mentioned about casual games to play. One I used to play in the past was called Big Kahuna Reef. A bit like Bejeweled. Love the music in the game, so atmospheric and sedate. Yes, and I sort of said the same thing about my ones. They were Bejeweled and Zuma. And Zuma was just one of those ones where once I started playing that game, I didn't stop. It was like, oh, I'm so close to getting that next wave. If I'd have just put that counter somewhere else, it would have meant that I'd have finished that level, and you just played another game. Those were the days when I was so addicted. Not anymore, unfortunately. My eyesight and sleepiness stops that. You continue. As for the last Starfighter Blu-ray, you paid a little more, but you've ended up with more special features, if that's your thing. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that later on, Denny. You got there in the end with the Ghosts of Motley Hall. Yeah, didn't I make a pig's ear of that last week? I had to buy it again when I found one of the discs were faulty. Yeah, again, just to reiterate what Rock God says, open your discs. I'm guilty. But then again, I'm buying so many, I'm just finding it that when I open it, I need to catalogue it, and I haven't got the time at the moment. But I'm going to make a big concerted effort to open absolutely every disc I've got by end of summer. Ian's question had me interested in your reply to James Mason films. Only one you missed on my list would have been Spring and Port Wine. I forgot about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Yeah, well, I was only able to name a couple. Actually, I don't know whether I would have still have had Spring and Port Wine. There was a courtroom case one that I remember, but I couldn't remember the title of it, and I still can't now. But Salem's Lot would have always have been in there. Oh yeah, and North by Northwest. So those were never going to be gone. You continue. Norman Wisdom. Now, there was an actor that had a range of emotions most actors struggle with. Yeah, and it's amazing again, because in the very early days of me going on the movie chat room circuit on YouTube, I mentioned Norman Wisdom, and he's mainly talked about now as not a person to talk about. You know, it's like, oh, don't like Norman Wisdom, atrocious, boring, same thing, wearing the same outfit, blah 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 blah. And I found that really strange, because I remember the joy of watching Normal Wisdom as a kid. And when DVD came out, one of the things that I did right at the beginning was buy a Normal Wisdom box set. And I still have no problem if it's on TV of me watching him. And I love the documentaries about how he's filled his life. You know, he basically never grew up. He was like Peter Pan, to be quite honest. And how he actually managed to become the icon that he was. Because if you look at his background, he had no money. He walked, I think, once from Portsmouth to London along the motorway to get to an interview to do a film. The guy was immense. Such a great history to him as well. So I find it strange that some people don't want to talk about Normal Wisdom. Shame, really. He did make me, as a child, cry. You know, there would always be the fun side of Normal Wisdom, and then there'd be the story part where all he wanted to do was help this one person's dying or whatever. And, you know, they'd play the emotional music, and there he would be trying to make things right, but bumbling. You know what I mean? So there's this pathos in him, you know? But hey, that's Normal Wisdom and me, not for other people's opinions. You continue. 2 highlights from my other friends last week were the Amstrad games from Seb and Nautilus from Mark, which is 20th Century Gaming. Yes, so I'll talk about Seb a little bit later on. I talked about Mark earlier in the last blog. That's because his stream was 8 or 9 days ago, and this is a weekly blog. So there is a bit of a crossover for you, to me, that they were 2 separate weeks. So we'll talk a little bit about Seb later on. But yes, I watched the Nautilus video as well. You continued. The Muhammad Ali box set from your late father must be a very special set for you to treasure. A very sentimental item indeed. Yes, it is. And it's one that makes me smile and makes me sad at the same time in virtually the same breath. I wondered on whether I should even show it last week, because it can bring that range of emotion where you don't want to portray sadness. But it filled another hole for another person who asked me about portraits. So I did it, and I'm glad I did. Muhammad Ali, what a character. If you don't know anything about him, well, A, I don't believe you. But B, yeah. A very divided character, but to me, just he is one of the greatest of the 20th century. You continue. The Mysterious Island film you bought, I have in a box set. Love the music during the balloon sequence flying over the ocean. Yes, I've started to, like you, Denny, but I'm a bit behind on you, filling in DVD films and putting them to Blu-ray, knowing full well that I don't think we'll see a 4K anytime too soon. Too many other films are approaching like their 40th anniversary. So 40 is one of those important numbers, as is 50, as is 20, as is 25. You tend to find on the box sets that you buy 50th anniversary edition or 40th anniversary edition. And 40 years back is 1984. And that's a very big year for films. A lot of things happened in 84 as they did in 85. So expect this year to be a glut of 4K films that came out to show an anniversary, because they came out in 1984. So you end, Denny. Let's have a look. So question for this week. I asked you not so long ago, did you really? Okay. About myself buying a new PC system. The spec on the CPU is advertised as so. It's an Intel Core i9 12900KF. What's your thoughts on the CPU and the rest of the package, which is an NVIDIA RTX 4060 Ti 8GB, 32GB of RAM, 1TB NVMe SSD drive, 650-watt power supply, Wi-Fi, liquid cooling, and Windows 11. Cheers, mate. Wishing positive energy and vibes. Wow. Okay. What can I say? First of all, let's start off with the Intel Core i9. You've actually probably cottoned on to probably one of the best bargain chips on the market at the moment. I think that's a £400 chip. It was 500 last year, so I'm imagining it was 400 this year. The reason I mention it is because of the letters at the end, which are important. KF. Okay. The F basically means that it doesn't link with any graphic card. Okay. Which means that the whole grunt of the CPU is based around its cores. And I believe the K means it's unlocked. So you've got an i9 processor that's unlocked and allows you to have a separate GPU which won't be interfered with by the CPU. So from that point of view, that's ideal because you've mentioned a graphic card, which I'll talk about in a moment. I believe that's a 5 gigahertz processor overclocked with a native 4. So yeah, that's fast. That's like what my dad would say, shit off a shovel. Shit. But you'd want a good motherboard in that. Okay. You haven't mentioned any motherboard in this, and the three of the things I look for when somebody is pricing something up is the motherboard, the memory, and the CPU. And then the reason for that is once you buy this system, the one thing that you're going to have trouble changing is going to be the CPU, because there'll be a different type of slot next year, and therefore you're trapped to the CPUs of the time. And if you buy the top of the range, there's nowhere for you to go. If you buy a middle of the range, you could then step yourself up, but you're always trapped because the motherboard has a certain type of slot for the processor to go into. And then of course, therefore, there's the chip itself, which I just mentioned. If you buy the top end, there's nowhere for you to go. And then there's the memory. Now, the memory is the third one of those three, and the reason I do that is because memory also has what they call speed to it, and obviously, memory is going up in speeds all the time. It used to be DDR3, then 4, then 5, and I dare say we're not too far away from the next speed hike. Your motherboard again won't recognize that new one, and if the BIOS can't be flashed to recognize the speed increase, then again you're trapped to the type of memory that you can have on it. And it's less so with the rest. An SSD drive doesn't matter. Graphic card doesn't matter. Wi-Fi, again, you can buy cards, doesn't really matter. So those sort of things you can slot in and out and improve upon. And I say that because really the graphic slot that we use now, the slot that we slot our graphic cards into, we've gone past the old days of AGP and ISA and so forth. So the through port of speed for the graphic card, it's probably at its fastest. saying that, there's probably going to be a new board next year, and it'll counteract what I've just said. So we move on. You mentioned that it's an NVIDIA RTX 4060 Ti, and if you remember my conversations last year, it'll tell you that my favourite cards that I've ever bought have been the middle of the range ones, but always the TIs. And the 4060 is the one that I go for. So for me last year it was the 3060. Before that it was the 2060, the 1060, and so forth and so forth. The TI is just that it has an overclock on it, which you can fiddle about with. Memory didn't used to be too much of a factor. All the memory really does is give a cache for loading textures into, generally, or that's what it used to be for. And most textures these days, they're on the SSD, and they're flashed across the system so fast because you've got an SSD drive now. So basically, that the caching of shaders and so forth, 8 gig should be ample. There are ones above it, 12 and 16. They don't double the price, but they put them, I think, into the bracket where they've become then not the bargain. So if you can get a good NVIDIA RTX 4060 Ti 8 gig, then you've got a bargain, because that's what I was talking about last year. 32 gig of RAM, as I said, look at the speed, get what you can. A 1 terabyte SSD drive should be ample. Some people like to also include the old style hard drive in with that, so you use that as a store for graphics and so forth, but anything that you want to run or install or play off of, you put onto the SSD drive. 1 terabyte these days is becoming now quite easy to fill up, depending on what applications you use. Now, I've got applications like Adobe, plus the Windows operating system, plus OBS, and so forth. And my own C drive is becoming cramped. I'm lucky in the fact that I've got another couple of SSD drives, and they copy across to each other very quickly over a 6 gig link. So, to be quite honest, it's not too big of a thing. So 1 terabyte should be the sweet spot, but if you can afford a 2 terabyte, I'd go with that. Everything else I totally agree with, but one, and that is the power supply. Now, you probably are not thinking about overclocking at the moment, but believe me, you will. And when you do, the wattage that's coming out of your power supply is going to be quite important, because it will draw more power to the CPU and it will draw more power to the GPU. And of course, every time you stick a USB device in, you know, a mouse, a keyboard, all into the USB slots, they all have a plus 5 volt rail. So basically your 650 watt will probably top out, and it'll stop you from overclocking. Now, overclocking won't be a thing for a couple of years for you, because that'll go pretty fast natively. But I would, if it was me, increase that power supply. I'd probably go up as high as 800. I myself have got a 1050 watt power supply. Over the top, and I totally get it. But at the end of the day, I don't have to worry about what I'm slotting in, what I'm taking out, etc., etc. So I would agree with everything that you've put there. The only thing I'd change is the power supply. There you are. Bloody hell. Haven't talked about PCs in a long time, and other people are probably shouting at the screen now saying, you're mental. Don't agree with you on that. Don't agree with you on that. Hey, he asked my opinion, not yours. Feel free, though. Comment. It's just that I always I like to have a chat with people when I'm talking about PCs, not doing it written down. Do you know what I mean? If my next door neighbour, and they have done this, by the way, my next door neighbour has spoken to me and said, can you price up a PC for us, or would you build it for us? Of course, I've said yes. And I've never charged for the build. I like doing it. Right? I just ask, what's it for? You know, is it to play games? Is it to go on the internet? You know, is it to do creative stuff with graphics and sound and so forth? And then I've given them quotes on what I consider to be bottom, mid, high-end range. And when they come back with their price, I go, you know, well, then your option's that one. And then I tell them what they're going to be bottlenecked by. I don't see anything on what your price range is with this, what it's going to be used for. So I'm guessing you love games, but you're more into your emulation and your indie games. And you love the creative side. You love the doing stuff with graphic manipulation. For that, you're going to need RAM. For that, you're going to need a pretty good CPU. But the money that you can save might make you go out and buy things like that you hadn't thought of, like a Wacom art tablet or a touch tablet that connects with your PC so that you can draw or manipulate. I mean, I used to use Wacom art tablets all the time. Have I got one down here? Yeah, I do. This is an old one. Don't use it anymore. Let's have a look, see if I can get it out. See, it's very dusty. I used to use a Wacom art tablet for doing all stuff in Photoshop. But of course, I now have a laptop which has got touchscreen. So basically I can use a pen. So you don't really tend to need the extra thing. But if you're into your transparency sheets that you can then trace over and all sorts of stuff, I tell you, art pads are brilliant. They're fantastic. Thank you so much, Denny. And like I said, I've given you quite a bit of time there, so I'm going to have to move on and say, I wish you well. Get better soon, my friend. Please give us a call when you can. I'd love to get caught up with you with what's going on at the moment with me and my health. And yes, it's the 10th when I go into hospital. So we move to the next one, and oh my God, we've got royalty. This man is the king of Atari. Has a fantastic channel. Everybody should sub to him. So entertaining, and that is Robert's Retro Gaming. Yay! So let's see what Robert's got to say. You know, just my little introduction to him. He's a bastard, really. Here we go. So it's got, hello. I hope you got your mum out to the garden centre. I expect it would raise her spirits to be out of the house and choose some plants. It was a bloody pain in the arse to get her out of the house, and she loved every minute of it when we were out. I got her a cup of tea when she came in, and then all week when it's been raining, she's been saying, when are you going to put them plants in then? So she's been making my life miserable. I'm not going to go out in the rain and do it. I'll do it when the sun's out. Anyway, you continue. Now, I want to see your reaction video to learning about various wars down through the ages. Unless you are a closet historian, there must be loads. Here's a question for you. God, bloody hell, I'm starting to worry. A video popped up in my recommendations about the TV show MASH, which I had not thought about in many years. It was being made and broadcast when I was a kid, and my family watched it for years and years, as well as after it ended in reruns. Was the show broadcast in the UK? Probably. Was it a phenomenon there? Question. Did you watch it back then? Question. Discuss amongst yourself. MASH. I have actually brought this up just recently, actually. MASH was never a show I particularly got distraught if I missed it. It wasn't a phenomenon, but it was highly entertaining, and it had a good following, and was good enough, I think, to have on the BBC One channel. Around about the same time as Taxi, we used to have a news that started at 9 o'clock, and at 9:25 you'd usually have some late comedies, or you'd have a cop show. Yeah. MASH would have been one of those things. It's shown all the time now on the Comedy Channel and so forth. 11 seasons, if I remember rightly. So it was a huge thing. I remember the film with Donald Sutherland more. 1970, is it? 1970, yeah. The Vietnam War. Now, the Vietnam War, I don't remember too much about as a kiddie, because when the Vietnam War, in the mid-70s, was sort of like diminishing slightly, I was only 6. And we had all sorts of stuff going over here. Miners' strikes, the 3-day week, all of that sort of stuff. So the actual wars that you were involved in that started off at the late 60s, mid to late 60s, I only know through documentaries now, but MASH was one of those ones that I think you watched possibly just because of the medical side of things. Obviously it was good humoured comedy, army, set in the army, all of that sort of stuff. But there was a medical side to it. And I know that my mum used to like things like General Hospital and shows like that. So she might have just watched it for that. The humour would have been very political. So we wouldn't have got it too much, I don't think. But a show is a success if during the DVD era they brought out box sets. And I remember that MASH came out as something that you bought per season 1 to 11, and then they brought it out as a big box set. So famous ones like that are A-Team, Knight Rider, all of those sorts. And then we've got, the comedies, Cheers and Frasier, and of course Taxi. And of course I remember all of the comedies, Rhoda, Laverne and Shirley, Mary Tyler Moore Show, the Bob Newhart Show. Was it Ed Asner that was the city editor of the news in those shows, the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and popped up in quite a few other things? Anyway, you're talking about MASH, so I'm diverse a little bit. It was a successful show, but it wasn't a phenomenon. And I enjoyed it, but if I missed an episode, I wasn't distraught. Couldn't, oh well, I missed it. Wasn't like anything. Now, if I missed an episode of Frasier or Cheers, quite upset. Father Ted, all of that. Yeah, I was quite upset. So I hope that gives you your answer, really. So then you've got, oh no, I got a flash of Steve's special salute. I like doing my salutes to Steve. Thanks for the trailers, and all the best to your mum, your garden, your stacks of movies and comics. Oh, and you too, I suppose. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, and you too, I suppose. Bloody hell. See what I mean? What a bastard. He's supposed to be a friend. Keeps saying he's going to call me. Lying bastard. Right, anyway, onwards and upwards, because I mentioned him again later on. You know what I mean? It's like he gets free advertisement. Place advert here. Anyway, we move. Salute to you, Robert. Moving on to Jambon. Here we go with Jambon. Hi, Del. Hope you and your mum are okay. Thank you for another entertaining vlog, and thank you for answering my question about casual games. You mentioned one called Zuma, so I decided to give it a go. It was very addictive, firing the marbles out of that frog's gob. Yeah, honestly. It's based on I mean, Ponder will tell you there was an arcade game of it. PopCap obviously ripped it off, I suppose. But I loved it. It was brilliant. Just something about the noise of the marbles when they hit each other and stuff. Anyway, and yep, you're right. Whenever I ask you a question, I do always ask you to ignore it if it's been asked before. That's because my memory is atrocious. I think all the boozing I've done over the years has taken its toll on my brain cells. I worry I'll end up being one of those old duffers who's always telling the same old boring stories again and again, though I suspect my poor partner would say I reached that point a long time ago. But isn't it nice that you got a partner that you can sort of like bounce things off of? You know what I mean? If you haven't got anyone, all you've got's the crossword. You know what I mean? That's not very good. Or Sudoku. Bloody hell. Anyway, I have another question if that's okay. But please ignore it if it's been asked before, you bastard. You've just copied and pasted that. I know you love comics, but I was wondering if there are any one-off graphic novels that are special to you that don't involve superheroes or characters from a comic book series. God. It's a difficult one, really, because I must admit, graphic novels have always been around the Marvel characters. So, you know, but what comes to mind? Well, I'll tell you what, that was probably the very first graphic novel I read. Tintin. Hershey's Adventures of Tintin. They came in big books. It was massive artwork. And it wasn't therefore a comic that you'd buy for 10p per week. I don't remember seeing Hershey's Adventures of Tintin for 10 pence on the shelf. If they did, I missed it. So it was a very special occasion if my parents bought me a big book like that. Later on, I did buy the Akira graphic novels, should I say, because Akira's a set. And it was very interesting because the first ones I bought were Japanese originals, and you read them back to front. It's weird, and you really don't understand what the hell's going on. You've only got the pictures. But I did watch the movie first, so I sort of knew what was going on. And then I bought them under a translation where they're in the right order, you know, for me to read, you know, as a Westerner. And that's not superhero. Now, there is one based a bit around superheroes, and it's one that I mentioned to Ryan the other day, which is hugely an acclaimed graphic novel. It's called Marvels, right? It tells the story of a reporter who works for the Daily Bugle. And it goes through his life. So you're really watching him, you know, at breakfast, at dinner, at tea, wandering through the streets of New York. While this is going on, huge events that were happening in the comics and then happening around him, and he's reporting on them. So it's not a superhero book, but it's a book about what life in New York would have been like with all of these things going on in New York with these superheroes, you know. So there's him reporting on the death of Gwen Stacy, a Spider-Man story. There's the story of the coming of Galactus, a Fantastic Four story. And it's all done with painted artwork by Alex Ross. Alex Ross, oh my God, what an artist. Second to me, to my favourite artist, John Romita Sr., is Alex Ross. He's a type of artist that sort of like does photorealistic, but he paints, he doesn't ink. So, well, he does ink, but what I'm saying is his normal medium is painting. So he uses watercolors and oil-based paint, and it gives a totally different look to a comic when it's painted. Oh wow! I mean, you want to imagine what flames look like when you paint them rather than draw and ink them. Totally different. Oh wow, they look great. I want to read an Alex Ross. I want to look at an Alex Ross book now. Those come to mind. Hope that's okay. Not very much. I would have mentioned things like Preacher and stuff like that. Swamp Thing, all of that. But to be quite honest, they were comic books and then turned into graphic novels as far as I'm concerned. Although there's graphic novels of them. Like Constantine, there you are, another one. So they were comic books and then turned into graphic novels. So they're not actually graphic novels, in my opinion. These, what I've just mentioned, were specific graphic novels. So hope that's answered your question. Thank you very much, Jambon. That's brilliant. Wish you well, matey. And we move on to Carl Todd. Oh, we've got another quite long one. Here we go. I'll try and read it out as fast as I can. Hi, Del. I've been meaning to write to you for ages, but things have been so busy recently. I owe you an apology for being away for so long. At the end of last year, a few things happened that caused me to take a break from things. One of the dogs died, and then I had cancer scare. Since emigrating, I need to pay for medical insurance since there's no National Health Service, and part of that involves regular health checks. During a check, a lump was found and cut out, and then I had a long wait for the results. Luckily, I was given the all clear. But after that, I decided to reprioritise things. I've continued watching and liking, but just didn't get around to writing any questions. Work has been intense due to a crunch to hit the release date of lots of early morning finishes. Finally, got the release out last week, but now I caught COVID, so I'm feeling run down again. Wow, what a block of text to read out. My thoughts are with you, Carl. I didn't know. And although you've been missed, I can totally understand it. My God, what would it be like if I find out that some of the problems that I've got are cancer related? They say that cancer now affects 1 in 2 of us. So that's a half of the world. I don't know what I'm going to be like. I dare say I'll struggle through. But yeah, matey, look after yourself, look after your family, all of that sort of stuff. Forget about this little thing. My God, it's nice. It's nice to get a like. It's nice to get a comment, all of that sort of stuff. Those things are more important, matey. My God, you don't need to explain anything to me. But will you continue now? Anyway, I hope that you get positive news about your health. Always try to stay positive. Big thank you for mentioning that Sinbad Blu-ray discount back around Christmas time. I managed to pick them up too. I really enjoyed the interview with Rock God. That was so good. I'm also enjoying the in-depth videos with Denny. Keep up the great work. I'm always watching them while working, and it helps make the day go by. Thank you so much. See what I mean? How do I take a compliment like that? I hope I take it in good stead. Denny's going to be over the moon with that, and I am as well. The interview I did with Rock God, I love doing it. I hope my friend Nige Rock God is proud of it. It's mentioned to me lots of times how insightful and how open Nige was to us all, and I want to do more. It's getting a person's time for this, because if you can imagine, when you watched that, there was no editing involved. It was 5.5 hours, and therefore I need to therefore find someone that I can sit down with and go, have you got 5 hours? Make sure everybody's all right. Your daughters, your kids, the dog walking, going to the toilet, all of that sort of stuff. Because your ass is here for 5 hours. You know what I mean? So it is a tricky one. And my next holiday is actually the bank holiday coming up. So in May, in England, we get 2 bank holidays, beginning of May, end of May. So at the end of May, I've got 5 or 6 days holiday. And my intention is, if I haven't done it beforehand, to do another interview. And I've got one person in mind. The person knows who that is. He said he's got some trepidations about it. But I also know that he's not calling me at the moment or speaking to me very much. So I think he's got things going on in his life. And so all I can do is have my fingers crossed that, we strike up our conversations again and we're able to do an interview. That'd be really good because, he started me off really doing my blogs. So it'd be really nice to have him do the very first full blown interview, because there's nothing to take away from the one that I did with Rock God, but it was sort of like the beta version. You see what I mean? It's the version that does it work? Is there things I need to change? And there was a few little things that I need to change. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you do watch the video, when you get to the second video, I asked too many questions in regards to going to pubs and nightclubs and stuff, when this particular person doesn't do that. So you then have to think on the fly, what did you fill your time with then? And luckily I had a backup, so that was good. So anyway, you continue. Anyway, I hope you got positive news about your health. Yeah. So here's some questions. Often plans can be in place to make a film for many years, but for one reason or another, the film never gets made. There are some high-profile cases, such as Kubrick's Napoleon. Yeah, that's a well-known one. Going to be a Del Toro's At the Mountain of Madness. Yeah. I know of that one, but don't know too much about it. Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek movie. Yeah, that was fun. I didn't know whether he was actually joking about that, but apparently he's a big fan and really wanted to do that. Are there any unmade projects like that you wish had been made? God, I've got to think now. Well, the big one and the easy one is James Cameron, isn't it? He was going to do Spider-Man. Before Sam Raimi came along, his studio bidded for the rights to do Spider-Man. It was agreed, but it was locked in license hell because it was Canon, I think, that held the license, and they wouldn't relinquish it for years and years and years. So James Cameron wrote a storyboard, even got some actors on board. I think there was going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be Doc Ock, I think, for a while. It was going to involve Doc Ock and the Vulture, if I remember rightly. Mysterio was in it. It was going to be an origin tale. Spider-Man was going to be much more edgier, more akin to a spider than the comic book. Which, if I remember rightly, when Stanley read the script, said he didn't have much of a problem with, because he could see the truth in the story. Although he did want him to soften it up a bit, especially when it comes to Peter Parker. So yes, Spider-Man was one. I think there was one that Ridley Scott was going to do that he pulled out of. For the love of me, I can't remember what it was. Um, Not many are coming to mind, matey. I have to say, Kubrick's Napoleon is a well documented one, and one I've studied. Such a shame on that. And Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek is one of those funny ones that if ever I'm asked this sort of question, I would have brought that one up. So no, I don't really have any others. Spider-Man one was such a shame, though. I mean, that is quite well known, and you can look at all the storyboards from it on the web. The storyboards were archived and given and put on the web, and you can totally look for it, and it looks gorgeous. You know. So second one, I don't recall you ever mentioning Angelo Badalamenti. Do you like any of his music? Angelo, yeah. Oh my god. Now let me have a think. That's the guy who did the theme to Twin Peaks. Yes, Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet. Yeah. Never the biggest of fans. I know that he did Christmas Vacation score. I think he did a couple of Nightmare on Elm Streets. But whenever you're doing a Nightmare on Elm Street score and it's a little bit later on, you tend to find that you've got to pay homage to Freddy's theme. You know what I mean? And it's very therefore difficult for the composer to move away from that. So, but and of course, Christmas Vacation is buried behind all of the Christmas music that's in there, and instruments like tambourines and things, you know, and sleigh bells and all that sort of stuff. But Twin Peaks, wow, yeah, that's got a heavy bass line, hasn't it? And Blue Velvet is iconic. I have got the Twin Peaks soundtrack. I have got Blue Velvet soundtrack. And I've got the National Lampoon's soundtrack. I believe I've got a couple of the Nightmare on Elm Streets. I am not like my friend Nige. He's got he's got such a wonderful vinyl collection. Please go and see his channel. It's brilliant. Of horror vinyl. Horror vinyl to me, I've got less of, but I do have quite a bit. But it's the main theme of the character that I like. You know, like the Halloween theme, the Candyman theme, the Freddy's theme. You know, all of those. You tend to find that in those films, wherever, especially when it's a slasher, the particular slasher has a theme, and they're usually top notch. They really usually do an iconic one. I mean, who does not know the main theme to Halloween? I mean, my God, it's iconic. So yeah, I do know. So therefore, I do know Angelo's work, but I haven't got an awful lot of it. I will say that. Shame, really. And I think he's dead. Is he dead? His name rings a bell with me on Dying Not. Was it because he died young, or was it because he died not long ago? It's one of the two, and I'm sorry. And I'm fixating on death. I shouldn't do, but I remember certain people because they're either alive and still going and they're great, or they're composers that I used to collect and have died. And I'm pretty sure he's dead, but I'm not sure. Hope that answers your question. Thank you so much. What a great one. Sorry to end on a morbid bit. And please stay well, Carl, please. I hope everything's going well where you emigrated to. You know, such a great guy. Thank you so much for being a supporter for as long as you have been. Thank you. And we move to Wee Bob Art. Here we go with Wee Bob Art. He says, thanks for answering my question, and the Muhammad Ali box set was astounding. I'm glad you liked it. You asked an interesting question about portraits, and that one comes to mind. Most portraits that I think about are comic related. So I did used to collect a lot of a lot of magazines, but they were magazines on movies and computer games. And apart from Zap, that would have had a different cover every week, every month, the movie ones are all photos. Um, so a bit of a tricky one for me, really. Hope you and your mum are well, and hopefully things improve on the health front. Thank you so much. Question for next time. I watched Damsel this week. It is a Netflix movie with the girl from Stranger Things in it. Oh, well, I've seen Stranger Things. For the first 10, 20 minutes, I was like, I'm not going to enjoy this. But then the film took a turn for the better and turned somewhat scary. Maybe it was the fact that it was in a hotel room while on a course, and therefore alone in the room was pitch black. Have you ever seen the movie? And if so, what are your thoughts? If not, what somewhat scary movies have you seen that when you first saw it, you thought it was terrifying, enhanced due to the atmosphere you were watching it in? Anyway, all the best and enjoy your weekend. Wow. I haven't seen that film. That's the first thing I can tell you about, but I'm going to write that one down. It's terrible for me at the moment because there's so many things that I want to watch, but I'm falling asleep, and that's because of my health. Think about having one of the best hobbies in the world, and that is watching films or drawing or whatever it is, and finding out that your right hand has suddenly got a virus or a condition that stops you from drawing, or you've got a problem with concentration and you're falling asleep watching films. That's what's happening to me. And I'm finding it very, very difficult to remain positive about it. So I can only talk about scary movies that I've seen enhanced because of the environment that I was in. And of course, my mum would set the perfect example. When I was a kid, we used to watch the Hammer horror films. And when we were watching the horror Hammer films, they used to be on at night after the news. And my mum would turn the light off and just have a sort of like bedroom side lamp on. So therefore, you only had the light of the TV. And we'd watch things like Salem's Lot or The House That Dripped Blood or Dracula. From the 50s Dracula with the Hammer ones, and they really, really did enhance the situation. Do you know what I mean? That were in those films. I don't think of many modern films have actually scared me or even changed too much because of the environment I'm in. Apart from possibly two, there's one called Life. Which was brought up the other day for me. So there's one, Life. Trying to think of another. Event Horizon. Yeah, I watched that at night. I remember seeing that at the cinema with a load of friends, and so therefore you're not really scared. You're not really thinking about it. You're just engrossed in the film to have a chat about later on. But when I watched it on about a year or so back when it came out on 4K, yeah, I had the lights were dark. I put that on, and everything came back to me about that film. Yeah, that is definitely one. Some haunting films like Andromeda Strain, uh, those have been enhanced based on the environment that I'm in. So I hope that answers your story. Thank you so much, wee Bob. That's brilliant. And I'm just going to check on my mother for a moment because I've heard her clattering in the kitchen. Just want to make sure everything's okay. So this will be like seconds for you. Just bear with me.
Yep. So I think we're going now. So yeah, I've just spoken to my mum. By the way, she says hello to you all. That's great. I said, do you need to go to the toilet? No, and all that sort of stuff. Just sort of like get that out of the way. You know, I bet you any money she'll still come through the door in 30 minutes. So we'll continue, and we next get to Ian Hill, the Ramblings, my mate who I do live streams with on Wednesday. Great. It's really good to have a regular thing now. Everybody on his side of the channel have been absolutely wonderful and have accepted me. And we've just talked about everything movie-wise. So it's comedies, westerns, science fiction, nostalgia, albums, absolutely everything. It's not just films. It's been enlightening because it makes my brain think even more than the some of the things that I have been involved with as well. Don't get me wrong, I love those things. I'd love to be back on them. I've got so much to say, but it's great, and I'll react to basically the questions. I like the questions. Thinking off the top of my head of a topic is difficult. Ask anybody that's done these types of videos will know sometimes thinking of the content and doing a different slant on it is the hardest thing. But anyway, we start off with Ian Hill. He's got, "Hi Del Boy, I'm sorry you had a shit week. Really hope things can be worked out regarding your health. It's not just your physical health that is at stake here. I think there is a strain on your mental health too. The feeling of being alone. I totally understand. I had that when I was my late wife's carer. Without some escape, it just adds to this bad situation when something you love to do, you can't do. Being tired and falling asleep is the body's reaction to get the rest it needs. Hope your mum is doing okay." Yes, I think it's enlightening what you've just said there. I think you've said it better than I've done probably in months that I've been trying to portray it. As I don't like to bother people. I also know that when I reach out, sometimes they're just too busy, and that proves to me that there's something going on in their lives that they need to battle first before they come to me, and it makes you not feel wanted or needed. I know that's not true, but when you're in a dark place, it's hard to not think along those lines. I know that there's nothing bad or malice in any of it, but when things are on a spiral downwards, you've got to remain positive. You then have to look at yourself to do that, and that's one of the hardest things. And the way I used to combat that in the past is I used to go for walks, and I still do my walk, but it's harder for me to do it with the chest pains and with the knee problem and sciatica. I'm not walking as much, and therefore I'm not listening to podcasts as much, and I'm not listening to the news as much, and therefore I'm dwelling on things. So you've mentioned it perfectly, matey, and you're helping big time. If I didn't have that thing on Wednesday, I think I'd probably be in a worse place. So I just have to say thank you, for allowing me to do the things that I do on your stream. Brilliant it is. Thank you for coming on my live stream again. Despite how you've been feeling, you always give 100%, and our viewers appreciate that. See what I mean? I'm so gratified by all of that. They've been wonderful. Some of your people who watch your stream, absolutely brilliant. We've got so much that we want to say. It's why they go on for so long, but I don't mind that. They can go on for 8 hours. I don't care. That was episode 5, and we have built up some wonderful followers who enjoy what we do. Honestly, though, we were on for over 4 hours. The time went by so very, very quickly. We had some laughs too, and I really enjoy it. Looking forward to the next one on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Yeah, you've put 8 o'clock, and I bet you've put that there so I don't forget. I have now set my alarm to 7:45 in case I fall asleep. So that should not happen again, and I apologise for that.
enjoyed your review of Naked Gun, and good to see the gaming live stream you did. Yes, I hadn't done a gaming live stream in a long time, and I missed it. Missed it an awful lot. Just putting something out there that's not the norm. Impromptu is the word that I was trying to think of there. Great. And that Naked Gun was brilliant because it's been on my mind. Where have comedies gone? Brilliant. It was great to look at a film that makes you go, yeah, we miss those. Let's have more of it. So my question this week is, who are your favourite stand-up comedians? You could choose any era. Best wishes, and have a reet grand time. Oh, you get, though. Stand-up comedians. Oh, that's so much nostalgia. And I don't want to miss one. And I'm gonna miss loads. Let's see. Ones that come to mind. For whatever reason, right? And I don't want you to think, you know, that, well, why didn't you mention him, and why didn't you mention him, and or her? You know, some great female ones out there. Frankie Howard, yeah. Les Dawson. Oh, how can you not have Les Dawson in your list? Dave Allen, and may your God go with you. Brilliant. Fantastic. Person who he could just sit there with a glass in his hand just talking about colours, and I'm riveted. Freddie Starr, because me and my mum loved Freddie Starr. It's the mischievous nature. It's not about whether he was a bastard in real life or not. It was totally about his mischievous face. And my mum always used to turn around and say he had a beautiful voice, but he always cocked it up by putting jokes in it. I used to love all that. Singing Elvis or Rolling Stones numbers or old songs like Misty and things like that. It changed the words, and it's just the mischievous nature. Tommy Cooper, yeah, God. Now more a magician, more a like sort of like a light entertainment show. But my dad loved Tommy Cooper, and I'd sit with him and watch that. See, Benny Hill wasn't stand-up from my knowledge of him. Tommy Cooper did do after dinner speeches and did do stand-up of a sort, but it was always with his magic act. Jasper Carrot, just like anything, he would sit down, do some songs. Brummy, his accent, it just made me laugh as well. Less of an actor, comedian, more a stand-up comedian, observation of life. Victoria Wood, I was big on Victoria Wood, you know. I used to watch her with Wood and Walters on ITV. Unfortunately, it was great. And then I really cottoned onto her when she started to do her songs, you know. She did that famous one, didn't she? Let's Do It. Very, very, very missed comedian, and a talent that sadly lost. Modern ones, Peter Kay. Again, another observational thing. The karaoke misrepresented words, hilarious. You know, some people always talk about garlic bread and all of that. But I used to like all his little skits that he did as well. He did a piss take of Britain's Got Talent, Pop Idol, Dancing on Ice. He put all of these titles together and come up with this show that was brilliant. Talking about going on holidays and things and seeing Jaffa cakes on sale in Spain and that, and all of this sort of stuff. Like, oh, I got Jaffa cakes, look, oh. It's that sort of thing. Tim Vine, for a totally different reason. Very disjointed stand-up comedian, because
he's king of the one-liners. So very, very, I mean, he came up, I think, with 100 jokes in, I think it was like 5 minutes or something. Single line jokes. You've got to be a real fast brain to do that. Steve Coogan did a lot of stand-up, but it's his character portrayals that he'll always be remembered, Alan Partridge and so forth. Bill Bailey, similar reasons, more to do with the fact that he mixes music with his comedy act. So it'd say, what it would be like if Grandstand was done in a Russian style, and all of this. And then he'd play the Grandstand music, and he'd put a Russian element to it, and he'd play classical music and all of this. Brilliant in the series Black Books. Remember that. So I haven't mentioned things like some of my other comedy heroes like Eric Morecambe, Ernie Wise, and all of those, because I didn't really see them as stand-up comedians, more light entertainment presenters. Nothing to take away from them. Absolutely brilliant. The two Ronnies the same. See, Ronnie Barker wasn't a stand-up comedian. Character actor. American ones. Let's see. Steve Martin was big in my life. Robin Williams, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. Just to name some. Andy Kaufman. Obscure one. Saw a lot of those when I was watching Taxi or Whose Line Is It Anyway? Used to watch Whose Line Is It Anyway? Who remembers that? What a show. Talk about being at a party and doing it in the style of a mass murderer, etc., etc. Well, what a brilliant idea to do improv. Fantastic. Thanks for those memories. Yeah, brings back so many. I've missed a million. So apologies for that. But yeah, such happy memories of that. And salute to you, sir. And we come to the biggest salute of them all. Bastard Steve, ain't you? Fucking sticking pacing shit. My mate Steve's gaming. What can I say about my mate Steve's gaming? He makes me laugh so much. He's playing a great game at the moment called Planet Crafter. And his thoughts were mine when I was playing it, and I totally failed, and I corrected myself, and he's just about to approach the premise of where I was at, and then had to rethink the whole thing. And then what happened was I thought in the mind of the person who wrote the game, because it's not an A+ game, it's an indie game. And it came true. I mean, if you think about it, if you're terraforming a planet, do you build on the low ground or the high ground? Think about it. Anyway, that doesn't give anything away. He knows this. We played it together earlier this week. So what does he say? He says, "Hi, Del, it's late on Friday night. And I just thought, shit, I didn't comment on Del's blog. So this is a hurried response. Sorry. First, let me say again that I wish you all the very, very best for your health issues and hope this is sorted in a good way soon. I cannot imagine how stressful and worrying it is for you, and it is, matey. I don't really want to hide the fact that I'm worried to death. But people like you are making it so much easier for me. Thank you. I enjoyed our Planet Crafter game the other day. I did mean to nag you for another game in the last couple of days, but I've been sidetracked by stuff, and sometimes I'm just not in the mood to play any games. But we will play again, and we will need to get my capturing to get your voice. I feel some people would get a good giggle from watching us play. Now, let me quickly think up a question for you. Now let's see. Yes, right. I'm guessing you, like me, watched the original series of the Tomorrow People, not that garbage remake. Wasn't the original intro to that theme tune just awesome? No, that's not the question. The question is this. When you watched the series back in the day, did you walk around the room grabbing your belt buckle and pretending to jaunt? Or was I the only sad one doing that? Take care, mate, and love to your mum as usual. See what I mean? He just makes me laugh. And he's cottoned on to something. Anyway, the Tomorrow People, yeah. And the theme tune, Dudley Simpson. What a composer. Iconic. I've talked about it many times. All done with a lava lamp. Or photography that was stop sort of motion. I've talked about it before. There's a hand that comes at the screen and it slowly unravels like this. Like that. And then it goes back and it does the same thing. And then you've got a picture in the center and it expands that. There's a honeycomb type of effect and all sorts of stuff. Brilliant with this eerie music. And you got to remember, us as kiddies were 6-7 years old watching this. But the story of Tomorrow People, yeah. They were supposed to be, it's basically the X-Men in a way. How we perceive something that's different. How there are people that might have powers like telekinesis, mind reading, all of that sort of stuff. The next step in human evolution. I believe David Bowie was a big fan. Apparently the writer of the Tomorrow People was a friend of David Bowie, and he actually used some of the wording that's in the Tomorrow People in one of his songs in 1971 too, Homo Superium. People. Anyway, jaunting, yes. The way you jaunted in the Tomorrow People was that there was a lead character. What was his name? John, that's right. He built a lab with a biological computer. This computer was really weird. Made up of plastic and sort of like ball shapes, with metal sort of like rims around it. It was sort of like a table with a light above it, and you sort of sat around it, sort of like doing seance-y type things. And the computer was called Tim. And I used to pretend jaunting. So I used to stand and I'd put my both hands on my belt buckle like this and jaunt. And that's what you used to do to teleport, like in Star Trek's Beam Me Up, teleportation. But I used to pretend to have conversations with Tim, the computer. Because I used to, I can remember the voice in my head of Tim the computer, because he used to have a very deep, monotonish type voice. It used to be, he used to go, John, you need to come back, John. Something like that, I can't think of any dramatical words. But this voice was very eerie. And I used to, John would then communicate with Tim and he'd say, Tim, we need an analysis on this. And you'd wait for John, for Tim to actually come back with a reply. Yeah, you're not the only one. But I did lots of things like that. I used to run up and down the garden doing the banana splits run. La, 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 and all this sort of stuff. Sinbad the Sailor was a cartoon, and that had a belt buckle, and when you pulled the belt buckle's elasticy strand, he turned into Sinbad. I used to pretend that I was Popeye and crunch in a can, and making my muscles grow and then like this and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, as a kiddie, I used to try and mimic all that sort of stuff. Brilliant days. Thank you so much, Steve. Can't wait for more and more of your stuff, matey. And then we get to salute to you, sir. We get to Physical Media Life, and Physical Media Life, brilliant. Seen lots of his stuff. He's a very big movie watcher. I hope things get sorted out with your doctor. I know how you feel about Friends. I thought do you need a phone if no one contacts me? You sound like a sensitive, kind guy, and I completely understand how you feel. I moved town and have no friends and lost the ones I got in real life. I hope you get better. Please update us on what's happening, and you will for definite be updated. It's what my blog's all about, matey. I think sensitive might be the wrong word for me. I am a bit sensitive, but I think it's more to do with the fact that I dwell too much, overanalyze probably too much. But if you're not bouncing off things, if you don't vent, if you can't communicate with a person to get it out your system, it stays with you. And I'm sure you've heard at the end of people's breakups that the reason that they carry on with such bad blood is because you didn't get your point across, and you never now can. You know what I mean? So you constantly, therefore, bring it up or talk about it because you can't bring closure. That's it, closure, the word closure. So yeah, thank you so much for your comment. You're dead on, matey, and I'm trying to remain positive. Thank you so much. Thank you also for being a follower, of my little watching of films and so forth, and Ian's, and Scott, and Nigel, and all of those. I've seen you around. You're a great guy. Love chatting to you. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. By the way, I'm a subscriber to your channel, so please keep up the good work. Colin Jones, aka Ponder. Well, we all know Colin Jones, don't we? Here we go. It says here, it sounds like things are moving medically. Hope things turn out fine. And everybody's saying that. Thank you so much. It really is appreciated. Renationalism of our railway system isn't going to happen in 5 years. The way it's been run has put it way out of reach of the UK Treasury. And I can't disagree with you, matey. I read out an article on what Labour said, and I look at it tongue-in-cheek. You have to look at these things in tongue-in-cheek. It's like Labour will bring anything in to say, hire us, because we're going to turn life around. If they think that there's obviously a 60% swing that would say you ought to bring this back into government control, then they're going to say it regardless of whether they mean it or not. Do you know what I mean? Because they can contradict themselves once they're in power. Doesn't matter then. They're in power, aren't they? You can't do much about it. So it's like that. Space Dungeon, the game, is very difficult, and he's given me a web link. Yes, it is. I've already know that what that link is. I've seen Space Dungeon quite a few times. Bloody hard game. Oh boy, are you going to hear a moan from me at the next log? Is that? Oh God, is it something I've said? Hope not, matey. I've always bigged you up. I've always enjoyed your channel. Oh God, I'm starting to worry. Wow, not much to say this week. I think you've worried me enough. Bastard. No. Anybody that's still listening to this blog now, please go and see Colin Jones Ponders. Great. He does these well, you're going to know about it because I'm going to mention it later on. I've watched of his this week. Brilliant guy. Thank you so much. But you've got a question. What were your favourite board games from your childhood? Oh, matey. I didn't have too many board games because people didn't come round my house. I had a sister who basically, it was at a time where girl had girl things to do and boys had boy things to do. My sister didn't go out on bike rides with me. She didn't definitely stay in and play board games like Game of Life, Jaws, Buckaroo, even though I loved those. Kaplunk. As much as I'd have loved to play Crossfire with her, she wouldn't have been interested. But I did like those games. Monopoly. I didn't like Scrabble. Monopoly, Cluedo, Game of Life, Operation, the Mad Doctor's game. You need a very steady hand, apparently. Buckaroo, Kaplunk, Crossfire, Risk. Risk was a big one. Played Risk with my next door neighbour. Only those games took hours to play. Later on, I've learned to play chess, backgammon, drafts, snakes and ladders. When I was a kiddie, loved that. Reverse eye. Yeah, Mahjong. So many, matey, games I used to like playing before video games took over my life. Thank you so much, matey. What a wonderful memory. I haven't really thought about it too much. It has been mentioned. It's always nice to go back and see if there's one extra one that you haven't thought of. It's great. Then we move on to James Chavez. And it's got here, so you've had that treatment with those sticky circles all over your torso. Yeah, this was the ECG. And the miserable arm needle blood draw. Yeah, it's gone now, look. See? Took bloody ages. This I know from being in nursing care. Yeah, and then I've had to reply here to him personally. The next two lines don't make sense. It's got twee resi twee tt tots tears ctw cttc get to the with fax defect deli welly. So I didn't understand that. So I had to put thanks, James. Didn't get the message part past the nursing care part, but thank you for the message. I go for a myocardial perfusion scan shortly, so I'll keep you all informed. Thank you so much, Excelsior. Yes, because on the 10th of this month, which is next Friday, and this Friday coming, I go for my scan. It's got me worried. I need to talk to my mum about that, actually. I'll do that straight afterwards. And then the last comment is Martroid. And thank you very much, James, by the way, for your comment. As much as I couldn't read the last two lines, lovely that you're around and watching and caring so much. Thank you. And then Martroid. Evolution. So he's talking about the film, because I got that last week. Another guilty pleasure of mine. Pretty sure I only have it on UMD, though. Did you ever get into that particular format, Del? I have a nice little collection packed away in my attic. Probably never watch them ever again, but I'm glad I've got them all the same. UMD. Isn't that the format for PSP? I did have a couple of films. They were literally 50 pence or 99 pence in Kex and Game for the biggest amount of time. And the only reason I didn't buy them was they looked great on the handheld, but they looked bloody awful if you expanded it to TV, if I remember rightly. But I've got a collection of 10, possibly. I know one of them is Van Helsing. I've got that on UMD. And I think one is a Mission Impossible one. Yeah, I think I've got Mission Impossible, UMD. That's it, I think. Well, that I can remember. But yeah, I'd love to know how big your collection is, matey, what titles you had. Because that ends the comments. Thank you so much. Brilliant. So we now moved on to what we've watched on YouTube. So basically, I can sort of like drop this down a little bit now and start talking about what I've watched. This bit usually goes by a little bit quicker, so it's not too bad. So, as you know, I watched on YouTube. I watch stuff beyond my friendship with you guys. And I talk about those very quickly and then just give out a bit of a shout out to people that I watch regularly. So there's two of those that are that I watch every week without fail, and that is This Week in Retro and Tech Mode. Can't miss my Saturday without having This Week in Retro or Tech Mode. So This Week in Retro had the normal 3 subjects. They were mostly PC related. That's got me thinking, actually. So one of them was called Come On In, the DOS is Open. The next one is called Wingdings Commander. And the next one is The Amiga is Ugly, Yuck. Now, the first 2 are very nostalgic towards PCs. And it's made me think, yes, a lot of people are now, they're in the retro, talking about games and so forth. I think they're starting to believe or start talking about early DOS stuff. Games that were around the time when you were moving away from the Amiga and Atari STs and Archimedes of this world into the big PC world. Because there was an explosion of PC. I mean, it was literally huge. It was around the time that the machine went from a 486DX50 into the Pentium era. And as soon as we were into the Pentium era, it's almost like people were starting to have these PCs in their home. And we are talking a big major shift away from the computers that we were buying, that we were switching on. And all you got when you switched it on was a little cursor flashing with the word ready. The PC was more about loading an operating system, a disk operating system at that, and later on a Windows operating system or Linux or whatever was your flavor. And people are remembering certain games like Magic Carpet and Total Annihilation and Alone in the Dark and Day of the Tentacle and all sorts of games. That was that crossover period of Amiga to PC. Because the PC was a very expensive still piece of kit. And for many years, some people didn't even have sound cards in them. And the graphics were monochrome or 2-color, like or 8-color. They called them EGA, CGA, VGA, Super VGA, and so forth and so forth and so forth, so forth. I remember getting my first Visa card and playing Leaderboard, a golf game, and it was all using photorealistic trees that it drew. And we moved past that and into the polygon era and texture era and all sorts. So yeah, there's a huge nostalgia for me. I don't care what anybody says. There is a nostalgia behind PC. And it's less so than our 8-bit years. And that's because our 8-bit years, we used machines that were so different in their looks, so different in their actions. When you got to the PC, it was more generic, beige, plain looking things. So yeah, I do get that. But setting it up, making it work, playing the games, nostalgia. So that's why I've always not tried to put a year to my nostalgia, because I don't want people to think that my life ended with the Amiga, because it didn't. It went on and on and on into higher things. And of course, the Amiga is Ugly Yuck was a comment to make, because Dominic Diamond did an article, bit misrepresentative really, but what he was actually really trying to say was the computer sort of like things died rather quickly because of the advent of the console, the gaming console. And gaming consoles were sculptured devices. You know, the Genesis was a unique looking thing. The SNES was a unique looking thing. The NES was a unique looking thing. Every single device had its own shape and look and color. And PCs were more a typewriter in a wedge, you know? So I get it. So when the Amiga is there, it's very bland. But he's wrong. You want to see how wrong he is? Look at the A1000. The very first Amiga I had was an Amiga 1000. It is still, to this day, my most beautiful of machines I've ever owned. Miss it tremendously. And obviously better looking than the A500 in my opinion. But anyway, and Tecmo in this was doing a repair of a Sony S2 Sports Walkman, which he introduced last week. So he was showing off a range of Sony Walkman and range of audio devices. And he mentioned that one of them was broke, and he decided to repair it. And he changed the belt on it, and it was very interesting. Brilliant. So what else have I got to tell you about this week that I watched? There was a channel called Represent This. He started to do the Planet of the Apes series, just like a lot of people are. Only his is called Journey into the Planet of the Apes Part 1. And basically, if you look at the description, it is book to film. So in this very first episode, he talks about how the book was written, how far back you go with the writer, what his early days of his life was like, how the idea came about. I mean, this guy was in a concentration camp for years. He did menial jobs for years and years and years until he took the last gasp and said, I'm selling everything I own and I'm going to write a book. And that's what he did. And he wrote some classic books before even Planet of the Apes. So if you have got time, go and watch Represent This. It's a very good channel. Then there was a new guy, and the reason this one came up is because of one game. So it was fortuitous he came up. It was called Paradise Decay, and he's got a VR headset. Mine. He's got this MetaQuest 3. There we go, my MetaQuest 3. And there's a game that I played to death in the early PC days called Homeworld. Homeworld was the very first fully 3D RTS game that I remember playing. It was in space. The units now flew under and over and around, and you had huge battles next to planets. Imagine what that looks like in VR. And it came out this week in VR. And oh my God, am I going to buy that game. Because it is Homeworld 1 to a T. And the only thing they've changed is made it work in VR. So I'll remember all of the battles. And I'm sure all of those tactics will come back. So I'm really looking forward to that. In fact, I'll probably buy it after this stream. The next one is Mondo Chelic Movies, which I don't talk about too much. And I should do because I've been watching him for a long time. I only watched a couple of his shows before I met Nigel. And Nigel is big friends with Mondo. But he talks a lot about horror films. But I've always been not intimidated, but scared to say something to him. So I took the gamble of doing so this week because he brought out a video. I watched Alien and Aliens in 4K this week, and here are my thoughts. So of course you've instantly got me because he's talking about Alien and Aliens and its 4K versions. So instantly, I watched it, and he started talking about the soundtrack
the picture quality, what he thought of the qualities between the two, and he even went into whether he thought the Blu-ray that's included in the box is better than the 4K, which is great. That's a great. You can see how much depth people go into, and it's amazing. You must watch that video, by the way. It's a must. It's your homework for this week. But I mentioned something to him, and I said, do you know what? The soundtrack to Alien has got as much a backstory as the whole of making of that film. Such a huge story about Jerry Goldsmith and his frustration with the composing of that particular film. And it's because during the editing stage where it was being put together, Jerry Goldsmith had written a score, and they'd asked him to go back and rewrite a few cues because they didn't think the tone was right. And even just towards the end, and it was becoming D-Day for the film to be absolutely bolted together for turning into a film that you put at the pictures, they decided to go with two tunes that were still, well, one of them was still done by Jerry Goldsmith, but it was used in an earlier film. They thought that it sounded better in Alien than it did the actual tune they asked him to compose for specifically that scene. Apparently, Jerry Goldsmith was not bemused by that. I think he lightened up. Jerry Goldsmith was never the nicest of people to work with, apparently. Very, very passionate about his work, and wanted to do things in collaboration. And when the collaboration is moved away because an editor gets involved and then says, no, don't use that, use this, believe me, I'm right, you start to thinking, well, you're asking a person who's not the person who's writing the music's opinion. You're going to a person who is an editor who might not have as much music ability in him as you think. As we all know, it all worked out in the end. Alien's got a fantastic score. But yeah, interesting backstory. Definitely go and watch Mendo Chelovek's movies. Brilliant. And lastly, we've got Pixel Cherry Ninja. And he came to light. I've seen the videos before from it on his channel, but he was talking about the Mister this week, and that's because the Mister is very expensive, right? It's an expensive device for you to play retro machines on. But apparently there are now knockoff, or should I say cheaper variations of the main board at 50% off, which means that people that have been on the fence about buying one and they can't afford the £500 price tag, you're going to be able to knock that in half very shortly, even less than half, because they've brought there is a knockoff board that's being produced and they're available now apparently. So brilliant, means that so many more people are going to be able to look at a product that I think has changed my life a little bit, in regards to how I look at emulation, nostalgia, and gaming. And then there's a few of my friends here stuff, so let's get cracking. Look, we've got Ian Hill, the Ramblings, who I've mentioned earlier on today. Just a little snippet of his workload this week. Gone Girl review, Soylent Green review, North by Northwest review, Neil Young album review, Roxy Music album review, and Live With Me. And that's just some of it. And that doesn't go into the magazine reviews and Doctor Who reviews and X-Files reviews, which he's also done. Like I say, amount of work this guy puts out. And yet he holds me still high enough to invite me onto his stream. My God. I'm so privileged, to be quite honest. Then we got Euphoria Pictures, my friend Keith in Ireland. As I told you, his videos are second to none. The quality that they come out, the editing, everything, just brilliant. So he did 3 videos this week. He's done a room rearrange. So he's rearranged his room. Looks immaculate now. He's got all his busts at the back, his steelbooks and 4Ks on the left, Blu-rays on the right, etc., etc. It looks gorgeous. He did a review of the Oceans trilogy.
He went down a different route and bought the Ocean trilogy as individual steelbooks. I bought the one steelbook that includes all 3 films. Looks like I might have made a mistake there, but for me to correct that mistake will cost me £75. So that'll be later on if they're any around, and if they're not, then oh well, I've still got the 3 films in a steelbook. So there we go. And then he told all of his followers of a fantastic deal that you can get on Amazon Germany. 2 steelbooks, virtually the price of 1. Get them now. I instantly looked at it, saw them, went there, bought them. And I think that it said that there was 10 in stock when I did that. So I doubt now, that was on Friday, I doubt now on a Sunday whether they'll be available to you. But they were Evil Dead 2 and The Howling in one box, in one steel book. Well, 2 steel books in a plastic enclose. And the plastic enclose is designed to fit those 2 films. So it looked gorgeous. Brilliant. Then we move to Let's Get Kicking. What can I say about my friend Ryan? Brilliant guy, going to film studies, goes to the cinema an awful lot. I've done several watch-alongs with him. He's done the history of documentary filmmaking, which I watched twice, because there was bits in there that I needed to refresh myself on. I know an awful lot about documentaries because I've watched so many of them. But there was a lot in there that I just needed to refresh myself on. That's how good it was. So if somebody brings out something that makes you watch it twice because you need to reaffirm something, you've done something great. It's a portrayal of knowledge in a format that is compelling to watch. So definitely pick him out. And then when I was over at Ian's doing his Ian Hill the Ramblings live show, I came across a guy that asked some questions called Muckman Movies. Muckman Movies. That's M-U-C-K Man Movies. And he asked several poignant questions, and I thought, you know what? While I'm on stream, I'm going to subscribe to him because he just said he'd done his top 25 westerns and top 25 horrors. And I thought, wow, I do like the top 25 stuff. They're always a different list than what I would put in, but it's nice to see what another person does. And when I found his channel, my God, how many videos have I got to get caught up on? Anyway, fantastic. I subscribed to him there and then. And I advise you to do the same. Absolutely brilliant. I'm having a ball going through his back catalogue, to be quite honest. A video every couple of days. So a pace, therefore, that I can get caught up. So not one every day. Bloody hell. I'd never be able to catch up if that happens, I must admit. But I do love it when people do that. Means that I've got something to look forward to every day, doesn't it? And like I say, this week I've watched Playtendoguy come back and do his live stream. Had a ball watching that. There was a couple of films I mentioned that they've never heard of, like Run Silent, Run Deep, because they were talking about submarine films. I contradicted Ryan, and I didn't mean to, but it's just Ryan mentioned that he thought that Marvel should stop making films. The trouble when somebody mentions stopping something, I then go, why stop? Why not just diminish it down? Cut back a bit. Why stop something dead? I mean, that's what I think Hollywood's done with comedy. And I miss comedy. So I just went, do you know what? Wrong word to use. So I'll mention, I wouldn't say that you're wrong, Ryan, but I would say that from my opinion, I would cut back. And I think he took it the right way. But that's the nice beauty of doing a live chat thing, because you know you can get the reaction, and I think he took it in good spirits. Marvel are doing things wrong at the moment. I do like some of their output at the moment. They're doing a new cartoon at the moment called X-Men 97, is it? It's basically a modern day modernizing of the old X-Men cartoon from the 90s, which is doing wonderful things. Spider-Man was in this latest week's episode. It's very good. I've watched 5 of them. I think there's about 7 at the moment. They're approaching the end. I think they're doing a 3-parter, and the first part of that 3-parter was this week. So that was great. So I learned an awful lot from Playtendoguy. And then, as I said, I caught the end of Scott's The Movie Critic stream, and that's because I was at hospital on Friday. I had chest pains. So, of course, it was very difficult for me to be around at 7 o'clock for an 8 o'clock broadcast, because if you're there at 9 o'clock at night and you ask a question, you got no chance of hearing it. Really. So I just went in there and wished him well, but I don't think he ever even saw it. It's that's the problem now with that particular channel for me at the moment, is it's gone beyond where I can really get involved. But hey, never say never, and if I was invited, I'd be there like a snap. But we'll see. So then we get to your YouTube. We're approaching the end, and then we get to the trailers. So down the rabbit hole, what did he do this week? Oh my god, he did Robotron on the Nintendo 64, which I've got and loved to death. He did a Vectrex game called Vec Drift, which I loved. If I had a Vectrex, I'd play that game. And then another one, he was celebrating Star Wars Day, and celebrating it by saying why he doesn't like Attack of the Clones as a movie. So you can imagine 3 outputs there for somebody that said he was cutting back because he's got some work going on at his house. My God. Always love your stuff, Keith. Kevin. Down the rabbit hole. Brilliant. Kevin's brilliant. Then we got Robert's Retro Gaming. Oh, you must subscribe to Down the Rabbit Hole, please. Robert's Retro Gaming. Wow, what can you say? Here we go. Hardcore Minecraft 12 to 13. 8-bit games, Rocket Repair, Alphabet Zoo, Cuttle Mania, Galactic Gateway, Zargan, Mickey Goes Exploring. And he did a channel update on where he's going, because he did want to say to the world he's been known now as an Atari channel, but he doesn't want that to be his defining thing. So he is going to start bringing in Spectrum and Amstrad, Commodore 64, which he's started to bring slightly in anyway, arcade games. He wants to branch out, do a lot more stuff. Good for you, matey. Don't ever encroach on me, otherwise I'll knock your block off. Only joking. And you know that he's a gaming god, so please subscribe to him. Seb's Place. What can we say about Seb? You know that the quality of his videos have gone up drastically, and he did an 8-bit battle for Akari Warriors. Quite rightly, because of his background in research, he saw that there were 2 versions for the Commodore 64, and mentioned that, and mentioned how bad the original one was, the American one that was written, which was atrocious. On the most part, I agreed with his running order of which one is best. Not necessarily for the reasons. I don't look at, although it's important, I don't think the Commodore 64 one is so fast that it's bad. It goes about the same speed as the arcade. But I do understand that going slower could be a plus. But remember that most people back in the day bought that game for arcade accuracy. And if you want arcade accuracy, the Amstrad one is far from it, because it's slow. But it does work in its favour.
Then we get to Steve's Gaming, and I've already mentioned about Steve's Gaming. Wonderful guy, one of my friends, big friends. He's doing planet crafting. He's just done episodes 8 and 9. He did an Amstrad game called Frog-a-Lot. And that's because I think he bumped into our mutual friend 8-Bit Rach, and he decided to do an Amstrad game because he hadn't done an Amstrad game in a long time. It was very much like Nebulous. I pointed out to him that the music was from Gold Runner. Amazing how much they nicked in that game. And then he did his other series, which is Games I Sucked At, for which this week it was Bagman. You will get a ball watching Steve's Gaming. He dies, and it's so funny. He partakes knowledge, and it's so interesting. Definitely sub to him. Then we've got Ponder, aka Colin Jones. He did a Pow Kiddie RGB 30 unboxing. That's a console. Looks like this. There you go. There's mine. He's learning how to use it. He's now got it set up for HDMI capture. I don't do things like that. It's a good system. I like it. Very powerful for the money. Bought one as a gift for my friend at Christmas. Bought one for myself. A few months later, I got mine very cheap. About just over $40. But the first time I bought it, it was close to 80. So it is definitely still worthy of your attention if you like handhelds. And he's also done HDMI test and some gameplay, high score kerfuffle type stuff. Lastly, we've got my friend Mamemeister. What can I say about Mamemeister? You will always have, possibly, I should think, mostly always have at least two videos from him. One will be his Sunday stream and one will be his Friday waffle. However, please do understand, boys and girls, that if you are subscribing to Mamemeister, his success works on the basis of the questions that we give him. He's been doing it for 13, 14 years. It's very hard to come up with a topic these days. So if after this you've got a question that you can think of for him for next week, please leave a question for him. And we move on to what I've bought this week. So what have I bought this week? Quite a bit, to be quite honest. So this was cheap. I have quite nice memories of it, although I liked Bull Durham more. But I bought Major League on Steelbook. It's 35th anniversary. Brilliant. From Italy, I got Killers of the Flower Moon, which is Scorsese's new one. It wasn't cheap, but it was normal price. And if it's bootleg, it's bootleg. But if it ever comes out, I'll be buying it. That's because I love Scorsese, so I'll have that anyway. Then we've got a film here which I remember fondly from the 80s called Clue. Brilliant. Really looking forward to watching this one again. It's got Susan Sarandon in it, amongst many other actors and actresses. And then, if you remember rightly, I talked last week about my bad luck and the fact that I ordered a film that's now going to be released over here. The film actually finally turned up, The Last Starfighter. This is the Arrow American edition, so it's regional unlocked. And it's just one of those films that I just love. The score is done by Craig Safran. And the main theme is just brilliant. You want to buy that now? I think on vinyl it's 35 quid. If you want it on CD, it's anything from 50 to 150 pounds on CD. Such as the trying to find that disc. And that's the end. We're now going to do the old trailers. So I need to swap over to Media Playback View and start crack-a-lacking with some trailers. Now, hopefully there's no copyright strikes. One of them I ummed and ahed at
for obvious reasons. If this comes out late, it will be because of that one video, which I'll talk about at the end. I'm going on mute. You're going to listen to and watch some trailers.
Harry Doyle here, welcoming all of you to another season of Indians baseball.
Here's a list of players we'll be inviting to camp.
This guy here is dead.
Cross him off, then.
We'd love for you to come to spring training for a shot at this year's club.
By the way, you were with me last night. Who's this chick on top of me?
We'd still like to take a look at you at our spring camp.
Not sure I can make it by then.
Who is that?
Serrano.
What's his religion?
Voodoo.
Hey! Willie Mays Hayes here. Play like Mays, and I run like Hayes. How you doing? What the hell league you been playing in?
California Penal.
Don't you have any proven major league talent?
Now, I want to put together a team that'll help us relocate to Miami.
You want us to lose?
We've been losing. What I want is for us to finish dead last.
This year, the Cleveland Indians have a multi-talented team.
The first offering just a bit outside.
They're masters of the sacrifice.
He's looking to sacrifice a live chicken.
One whole chicken, just like you said.
The double play.
Excuse me.
I have a much better body than she does.
Thank you for me, she really does.
And the pick-off.
Every time we win, we peel a section.
Tom Berenger.
Zipper on your skirt stuck.
Use your imagination.
Charlie Sheen.
These things make me look ridiculous.
Seeing's the most important thing, son. I don't think it's that important.
Corbin Burnson. And Bob Uecker.
Haywood swings and crushes one towards South America.
Major League.
That ball wouldn't have been out of a lot of parks.
Name one.
Yellowstone.
Every person in this room has the perfect motive.
Stand back!
For murder.
What do you mean? Murder.
But only one of these suspects is the murderer. Is it the timid Mr. Green?
Why are you screaming? Because I'm frightened of what? Screaming!
Or the militant Colonel Mustard?
If I was the killer, I would kill you next.
Huh?
I said F.
Mrs. White, who helped her husband on his way?
Well, it's a matter of life after death. Now that he's dead, I have a life.
Miss Scarlet, who's helped many men along the way?
Practice makes perfect.
Professor Plum, who's looking for a way?
I'm looking.
Mrs. Peacock?
I have absolutely no idea what we're doing here, but I am determined to enjoy myself.
Or did the butler do it?
No.
Paramount Pictures invites you to an evening of mystery.
Let us in! Let us in! Let us out! Let us out!
Murder.
This is getting quite serious.
And madness. In the movie that makes a scene of the crime.
So who did it?
Clue. It's not just a game anymore.
Listen to me. I've got you. I won't let go.
Titanic was called the ship of dreams. And it was. It really was.
Give me your hand. Do you trust me?
I trust you.
Open your eyes.
I'm flying. Jack.
get dealt next. You'll learn to take life as it comes at you. To make each day count.
I'll never let go, Jack. I'll never let go.
Whose land is this? My land.
Well, our war hero has arrived.
You made a good choice coming back here. Osage are the finest, wealthiest, and most beautiful people on God's earth. They outsmarted everybody.
They have the say. Who gets the oil?
Son, I got a question. You like women?
That's my weakness.
Well, we mix these families together, and that estate money flows the right direction. It'll come to us.
Shomikasi. That's how you are.
I don't know what you said, but it must have been Indian for handsome devil.
Why did you come here?
I work with my uncle.
You scared of him?
Oh, he's the nicest man in the world.
The Osage, their time is over. We got to take back control of our home.
I was sent down from Washington, D.C. to see about these murders.
We have so many deaths, we've lost count. There's just bad luck.
Seems more like an epidemic than bad luck to me.
Osage is dying by the enemy. Do not let them die alone.
Evil surrounds my heart.
You gotta pick a side.
I don't even know if you love me anymore.
Of course I love you.
And kill these men who killed my family.
Did your wife say who she was most afraid of?
Don't do something you're gonna regret for the rest of your life.
I ain't got nothing but regret.
Alex Rogan had a dream.
You really are leaving here, aren't you?
To be as far away from here as possible.
You get your chance. When it comes, you gotta grab it with both hands.
It started with a game.
You gonna bust the record.
But it wasn't just any game.
You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
And then one night...
Centauri's the name. We have to talk about a matter of utmost importance. Step into my office. I've seen him come and I've seen him go, but you're the best, my boy. Light years ahead of the competition.
Hey. Alex didn't find his dream.
Hey, look out! Oh, dear.
His dream found him.
Where are we? Welcome to Rylos, my boy.
A world on the brink of destruction.
You were recruited by the Star League to defend
the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Of all the life forms, on all the planets, in all the galaxies.
Oh my God!
has been chosen. Alex Rogan.
Alex?
Max.
Is the last starfighter. For every Earthling who's ever imagined traveling beyond the stars.
Maybe there is a starfighter left.
I love you, Alex Rogan.
Comes the unforgettable story of one who made it. The last starfighter.
Yeah, and I checked the mic and it's bouncing up and down and it says it's live, so it looks like I've done it okay. And I forgot to show the reason why Titanic was there, because this finally turned up, this behemoth. Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, Titanic 25th anniversary 4K edition. And it's not exactly cheap, but, you know, obviously there are certain films that you need to have deluxe editions of. And that finally turned up this week. The 4K's been out for a long time, and I could have had just that. I have got a steelbook of the Blu-ray. So that was just sort of like the icing on the cake. And even now, I've got that theme tune to Last Starfighter in my head. What a theme. Craig Safran. He just knocked it out of the ballpark with that theme. Like I said, it's very expensive to look for. And so much history in that. To design a film around a video game screams merchandise. But they didn't make that film to be a game. It's not forced. It's not, hey, let's do the game and then make the film like I think Ghostbusters is these days. It was very much, hey, if this hits on a theme that basically tells a story, great. And that's what it did. A very big favourite of mine from the 80s, along with Batteries Not Included, Cocoon, and a lot of others. Heavy links to Halloween in that film, believe it or not, and Night of the Comet, another film that I really must go back to. Night of the Comet, I haven't thought about that for a long time. And with that, I'm going to say salute. My God, if I go any longer, we'll be in the 3 hours. So thank you for still listening. Hopefully I've got some news for you next week about how my scan goes. But I've got a funny thing that the results will take time to come. I'm just hoping that I get better. I've had a setback this week. 2 times I've had that pain in my chest. Let's hope it goes away. And with that, thank you so much for bearing with me, guys. I love you all to bits. Bye-bye.